Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here, and I thought it would be fun to go over some of my thoughts on the October 30th, 2023 Mac Focused Apple event. This is a really interesting, fun event that introduced some new Macs and also killed some Macs, and we're going to go over some more information about some of the things that happened at the event. You're going to stick around for this one. Let's jump in and get started. First, let's go over the event itself and some of the things about it. Then we're going to go over some of the new hardware and some of the hardware that Apple killed. So the event is really interesting because Apple normally does daytime, 12 noon, 10 a.m. California time events, and it's usually all daytime. So it's interesting that for the first time in a long time that there is a Apple focused nighttime event, and it's really fun because it went over the spooky kind of Halloween type of theme, and I thought it was fun. And it kind of roams around the campus here, and it comes up to Tim Cook. But I want to show you a little fun little Easter egg here. See this little flag? That's the Apple pirate flag that Steve Jobs used to use when they put the Macintosh team against the Apple II team, and they thought that they were pirates. And I thought that was kind of a real fun little Easter egg that they put in there. And there's another Easter egg coming, and I'll show you. So Tim Cook comes out here, and he introduces us right in the entranceway here. And I remember coming up here when we went to WWDC, Macola and I, we walked up these stairs, and the main entrance is right here to the main building, and then we walked around and it opened up by the cafeteria. So it's just fun to see him talk right in front of the main building. So he goes through and he talks about the Mac a little bit, and he gets into the introduction here, and I'll skip forward a little bit. So he introduced Johnny, the Senior Vice President of Hardware Technologies, and as you can see, they're in the lab. And vintage Mac fans love to look through the lab because of some of the Easter eggs. And here's the second Easter egg right here, which is a tangerine. I called it orange, and Steve Mac 84, one of my good friends, called it the correct name, which is tangerine orange color. And they set this here, and it's a perfect little Easter egg for Halloween. And I just love looking at this lab because there's so many things going on here when he's talking. And here he is talking about some of the new specs of the M3, and I'm like, ooh, what can maybe I can find like an excerpt on the shelf. But anyway, he goes in here and he introduces the M3, M3 Pro, and M3 Max processors, and they're going to be put into the new MacBook Pro. And this is interesting here because there's a big change. First of all, for the 14-inch, and I want to go over the 14-inch MacBook Pro first. So when they introduced the MacBook Pro 14-inch, I'm thinking, okay, no big deal. It's just a spec bump for CPU. Okay, and that's fine. But then I started looking at some of the stuff, and I actually started talking to Macola about the 14-inch. And he's like, oh, well, did you see this? I'm like, what? And when he showed me these pictures, I had to do a double take because the original 14-inch had 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, and the base model M3 now only has 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, and it's Thunderbolt 3. So no Thunderbolt 4 for the base model. We're only talking about base model M3 only. And there's Thunderbolt 3 and USB-C 4, and they took out the third USB-C port. Now, keep in mind, this is $400 cheaper. It comes in at $1,600 instead of the base $2,000 price tag. There's a reason why they did this, and I'll get to that later. But they're positioning this base 14-inch as more of a middle ground model from the MacBook Air M2 to get to the higher end 14-inch and the 16-inch MacBook Pro. You can see, though, if you go up to the M3 Pro and the M3 Max, you do get 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, so that does not change. But I think it's interesting because they made a whole different case design here. They had to mill and construct a whole different case design to eliminate that whole third port here. And again, you have to lose $400 somewhere. And that goes into the next problem that I see with the 14-inch. Now, when we look at some of the specs here, and we look at the base memory, 8 gigabytes. And again, for light users, 8 gigabytes does work. But we were kind of hoping that 16 gigabytes would be the standard once you get up to the 14-inch. But that's that trade-off that you're doing when you have that base M3, 8 gigabytes of unified memory. They did not try to stick you with 256, which is good. They got the 512 in here, so that's good. And again, you could still upgrade it if you want to 16 gigabytes. and then you're at about $1,800. So that's just something to consider. And again, I think this is positioned good. The good thing is you do get the 120 hertz display. So we'll look at that real quick, because that's something that they don't really press on. Apple has this really nice comparison where you can compare up to 3 different Macs, even old models. So I've got the 14-inch M1, the 14-inch M2, and then the 14-inch M3 base model only. So when we go down here, you can see some of the differences here, some of the cores and the maximum unified memory that you can install in storage. But I wanted to go down to the screen ProMotion display. Some people were really surprised that they didn't try to downgrade that to the 60 hertz screen. But the other thing is the battery is interesting too, because when we go down here, and you can see the weight difference here, we've got 3.5 pounds compared to the 3.4 pounds on the M3, because obviously they're removing those pieces for the third port. The battery, we can see that we're getting up to 15 hours, which is actually a lot better than the M2 and the 14-inch. And it's actually down when you move it to the Pro. So when you go to the Pro, you're actually down to 12. So I thought that was interesting. So that pretty much covers the 14-inch MacBook Pro M3 model. The next thing they introduce is a new 16-inch MacBook Pro, but the price was pretty much the same from the last time. And there was a couple of the things that were the same. The screen, we got obviously more cores for the M3. When you look at the memory though, we got a big boost here. The maximum memory that you could get on the M2 was 96. Now you can get up to 128 gigabytes, which is just huge for a M3 laptop. And then the storage also is the same. You can go up to 8 terabytes across the board, only in the M3 Max on this particular model, as you can see noted here. When you look down here on some of the other specifications, you can see that we still have the Thunderbolt 4. That didn't change, and they didn't try to downgrade that or anything like that. And the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth are the same across the board. And when you look at the battery was the same with the M2, a little bit even over the M1. So that was pretty much the same, and we got the same chargers also. The big change though in the 16-inch MacBook Pro is the color. I know color, who cares about the color, but I gotta tell you, this new color is just beautiful looking, and you can see what it looks like, and it looks like the midnight blue a little bit, but Apple says that there's a new coating on here that's supposed to protect against the fingerprints, because the midnight blue actually, it's almost like a matte finish. There would be a lot of fingerprints in there. That was a big problem. I'm hoping that Space Black, that finish will prevent some of that, because that would be really nice. And I'm a big fan of this. I mean, this thing looks fantastic, and I can't wait to see it in person. I don't know, there's something about that black, there's just almost like the Darth Vader look that I really think is cool. And that about covers it for the 16-inch MacBook Pro. The next thing that was updated was the iMac, and the iMac's just kind of been sitting out there on the M1 for a while now and hasn't seen any really updates to M2 or anything like that. And we were also expecting to see the transition to USB-C for things like, for example, the Magic Keyboard, the Magic Mouse, and all that. And to a lot of people's disappointment, we did not see that. The accessories with the new M3 iMac are Lightning, and those do not change. And people were hoping that they would make that change. It just did not happen. We did get the M3, and we've got the 24 2-port, 4-port M1, and then the M3 4-port that we're comparing here. And pretty much we're same across the board. Obviously, the changes to the CPU, but we did get a bump in the up to 24 gigabytes of memory, up from 16 gigabytes, same terabyte storage. When we go down here and we look, and the storage is the same, 2 terabytes across the board for the 4-port display, same across the board. When we get down to the keyboard and trackpad, the same as we talked about with the Lightning cable. They did change the Wi-Fi. We did get upgraded from Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 6E, and the Bluetooth was upgraded also to 5.3 over 5.0. So there was definitely some changes there, which is nice to see. We did not see a jump to Thunderbolt 4 though. Still Thunderbolt 3, and then our USB 4 ports, We still have that gigabit Ethernet that's available in the power adapter too, which is still a really unique thing. That about wraps it up for the iMac. It's just really weird that it's great to see that it's still in the lineup because I think it's a wonderful machine. It's just weird that it was kind of like half done, right? Let me know your thoughts about the iMac. I think the iMac is a wonderful computer. The only thing that I wish that it had when it was originally made was more ports. The iMac, all the way back to the original iMac, always had a bunch of ports. It was positioned as an entry-level computer, but even when it was the G3 iMac, it had plenty of ports for you to be able to do the things that you needed. And the fact that it only has, for example, it just comes with two ports, two USB-C ports, it was disappointing to say the least. Now, don't get me wrong, the form factor is really thin and nice, but I think this is one of Johnny Ive's last designs that he made. This has got Johnny Ive written all over it. This is basically the 2016 MacBook Pro all over again in the desktop. Because I don't think the way Apple went today, of course, looking at the new MacBook Pros with all the ports that they have today, that the iMac would have been released with just two USB-C Thunderbolt ports. It just doesn't make any sense. But that's the new M3 iMac. Now let's talk about the hardware that is no longer with us. Like the Touch Bar is now dead. It was introduced at the October 27th event 2016 on the brand new USB-C based MacBook Pro, and it died today. The 13-inch was the only MacBook Pro to still use the Touch Bar, and it is now dead. So after 7 years, this thing is gone. And what's interesting is it really does divide the community. Some people hate it. Some people think this is the stupidest thing ever, wasteful, it's too expensive, it adds to the price of the MacBook Pro, and others like it. And I'll be honest with you, and I like the Touch Bar, and the reason is because over time I've used it to do different things, and I just like the functionality of it. And don't get me wrong, I like the function keys. I'm a big fan of the function keys, but I find myself using the Touch Bar a lot more often for different things, and it's nice to be able to see that display and be able to slide or do those different things. I end up liking it. And tell me what you think about the Touch Bar. Do you think it's a nice feature? Do you not even care about it at all? It's like, well, it's fine, I use it, and I don't care if it's there or not. Or do you really dislike the Touch Bar? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious what you think of the Touch Bar. But it's dead. Long live the Touch Bar. The next death in this event was the 13-inch MacBook Pro. I mentioned that the Touch Bar is dead, but with that also kills the entire 13-inch line. And now all we have is the 14 and the 16. And I mentioned that we were going to talk more about where that 14-inch fits into the lineup, and that's where it is. With the 13-inch gone, we've got the MacBook Air coming in here, and that lower cost 14-inch going into this slot here. And this also divides the community a little bit too, because there was a lot of people that liked that 13-inch because of the size and the fact that it had active cooling in there. So you had that Air that would have to throttle when it got hot or was under load. And the middle ground was this 13-inch price-wise, and it had the Touch Bar, and it had a little bit better speakers and some other things, and it had active cooling with the fan, so it could cool down. And a lot of people liked that 13-inch. They thought that was just that perfect mixture of size and features before jumping up to the more expensive 14-inch. But now it's gone. And that's why that 14-inch is going to try to go into this spot. And let me know what you think about this. Did you ever use a 13-inch MacBook Pro? The first one ever introduced was on June 8, 2009. And this is the very first one. The Core 2 Duo 2.6 13-inch MacBook Pro. And you can see, and I like to call this the Fatbook Pro because it was just so wonderful with all these ports. You had Ethernet, you had Firewire, USB, you had everything that you needed on this. And that's why it was a Pro model, because it had all the Pro features you need. And I thought it was a nice unit. And I wasn't a big fan of it or I didn't hate it. It was just kind of this middle ground where I really liked the 15-inch instead of the 13-inch. But there were many people that got this machine and they loved it. And it's kind of sad to see it go here. So long live the 13-inch MacBook Pro. Let me know what you think. Did you have a 13-inch MacBook Pro, and are you sad to see it go, or is it like, who cares? Let me know. I wanted to go over some of the fun things that we kind of talked about, or I talked about and others talked about after the event happened. We already talked about some of the things, and I pointed this out because Aaron posted this image, the new space black charge cable for MagSafe, and it had a black painted USB-C side, and I was like, what? And I was joking about, this is a goofy post that first world problem alert. Look, this cord doesn't even have a blue part. But I was such a goofball that I didn't realize at the time that the charge block was white. So that's why they did it. So it was the USB-C would match the charge block. So when I saw that this was black, I was like, well, wait a minute. Did they have a black charge block? Nope. Dina K actually put out that, and sure enough, it's a white charge block. So it's funny that they did that. Just a little small thing that was noticed. The other thing is we were kind of hoping Craig would make an appearance, maybe in costume or something fun. A lot of people like Craig because he's just really personable, and he seems to genuinely love the Mac and the software side of things. And he's just an overall really nice guy. And that's why people like him. I think that it would have been fun for him to be there. Maybe he was just sitting on the sidelines having fun, but maybe next time, Craig. Here's Aaron again, and he posted about build version of the pre-installed software for the brand new Macs, which is 14.1 23B2073. And you know I love talking about macOS versions, and you can tell right away this is what we call in Mac admins is a forked version. And you can see here by the 4 digits after the letter code. And what this means is that this version is only for those new Macs and cannot be installed on any other compatible Mac. And then what will happen is that once 14.2 hits, usually what they'll do is unify the entire version of macOS Sonoma so it can be installed on any Macs. But I'll cover that more when we get a new beta. I'm figuring the next version of 14.2 beta will most likely have the hardware IDs in there. We'll be able to pull those out and see a little bit more information. I like Joanna Stern. She is a very unique writer for the Wall Street Journal. And she wrote a story about the new products. And one of the things that she put in there, she was joking about, she says, at least these cute kids aren't bothered by the fact that the Magic Mouse still charges via lightning cable. And I think that's funny when you really kind of put everything into perspective, right? In the fact that, sure, we all wanted them to move over to USB-C to kind of unify everything now, right? But it's like, and other people are going to be like, who cares? As long as I can charge my mouse, I'm fine. And I know a lot of people still rag on the fact that you have to turn the mouse over to charge. And I get that, I do. But the fact that the charge lasts for like sometimes up to 2 months before. And then you turn it over and you can plug it in for like 3 minutes and you got like a 40% charge, right? I get it, but I don't. And it pretty much divides the community when we talk about that mouse. Because I was a big fan of the Magic Mouse when it first came out. Over time, I finally saw what other people were seeing. It's smaller and it starts to cramp up on the hand. And I actually moved to a Logitech MX vertical mouse, and I haven't looked back because it's a lot easier on the hand and it puts your hand into a better position. So I just thought this was interesting. And that's the Apple event. I hope you enjoyed just sitting here and listening to me ramble on about Macs. I could talk about Macs all day. And I hope you enjoyed the Apple event and talking about all the new Macs that were on. It was the shortest event in a while, but it was also the most interesting, and I thought it was fun. Let me know in the comments what you think of the new lineup here of M3, and we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.